I have an interesting article here. Mothers break the silence. How feeding their kids a non-GMO diet heal everything from autism symptoms to autoimmune diseases.
Okay.
So it is really the effect of GMO food on the health of your young ones.
But you're
On
taking
the,
words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, well, that is evidence that GMO is not good for you.
oh, you don't need any evidence. Everybody knows it ain't good for you. For one, you get a much reduced nutrition out of GMOs. Two, GMOs are now normally associated with massive amounts of glyphosate,
Yeah.
which has all the problems, right? Starting from swollen prostates right up to cancer.
Yeah. And the destruction of your shikimaki pathway.
In the
your
bacteria in your gut.
Yes.
So you're mashing up the gut bacteria too. I think that over a period of about 2 generations, you will see the effect. You can already see the effect in this generation because I say that 20 years ago, when you did a sperm count in Miami, you would get anything from 120 million to 180 million. Now when you do a sperm count in Trinidad on young people, you find that about the maximum you'll get is 40 million. But there's another aspect to that. It's not 40 million healthy sperm. It is 40 million with 20 million with bent heads, 5 million with no tails, another 10 million can't swim. So when you finish, you look and you say, hey, you're lucky if you have 2 million that look good.
So that's mostly black.
And mostly blacks. So what you have is a lot of people, they can't get pregnant because the man production of sperm is almost negligible. Now, if you consider that 20 years ago, the average sperm count was between 100 to 180 million. And it has gone down now. You can't see 40 million anymore, to under 20 million. That is 1/5 of what it was. If we keep on eating all this junk that is around here, it means by the end of this generation and the next generation coming up, it's going to be even lower. Because they've increased the amount of glyphosate in the foods recently, and they've increased a lot of the toxins. We have a newfound thing that we're doing where when the gardener wants to carry plant into the market and it's green, what he does is he has this little bottle of stuff and he makes a little hole on the top of the stem and he puts a drop in, and 2 days later he has all his plantings a nice yellow color, even.
And hard like a green.
Hard like it green. And the thing about it is that that also interferes with the ripening of the fruit. So, I've been standing in the market already and hear people saying, how come you're planting so spotty? I want a nice yellow one. They don't have a clue that you're putting this extra hormone into the thing. And you have hormone that you put in the cassava plant to make the cassava bigger. It's crazy. Everything going. Now, that making of the cassava bigger is not because, your soil is richer. It's because you've given it a growth hormone to grow in poor soil. So it means that the food value, the taste, everything
it doesn't have, it's not getting no nutrients.
is going down rapidly. So the next thing you're going to have is more insects and things attacking it, like before, because it's just not going to have the defensive thing. But the point about it is, what are the effects of all these additives that we put on? Who checks all these things coming into the country and decide whether the thing has a deleterious effect on your health or not?
But aren't these hormones and chemicals staying in the soil as well? To infect other crops?
Of course. Well, I don't know if it has a decay time or what. But no, when you put it on that crop, it will affect that crop, and obviously it will also affect the next crop.
And then the nutritional value has been somewhat reduced.
Not somewhat reduced, vastly reduced. So what we're doing is we're gradually eating food that have less and less problems, less and less nutrients.
Just now we'll be consuming nothing because
Which is interesting because look at this. Yeah, before the last, we had a seaweed epidemic, they call it.
Yes.
And we say, oh
Yes.
God, wait.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I'm sitting down saying to myself, well, if I had if I was into my farming thing, I'd take my van, hire somebody, go up the road,
Load up.
load up, bring it, put it on a little concrete platform, wash out the salt out of it, all right? And then put it in a place where it could make mulch, compost.
Yeah.
And then add dead grass and all the things that you have to make compost to that. And put that together. Leave it there for 6 months or so. Wet it all the time.
So basically using
And
the
turn it
seaweed
up.
as a catalyst.
Oh no, the seaweed is going to be manure.
All right.
But it's a different kind of manure. Because it will have all the trace minerals, right, for crops, which we always sadly lack. Beside all the trace minerals, you're going to have iodine. So all your crops are going to have a certain amount of iodine. And our next subject coming up is iodine and nutrients. So they've always shown that whenever you add seaweed to manure, you get a drastic improvement in the quality of the crop, you know. So I was in my office one day and a guy came in from Tobago. And we were talking, and he said, oh, I have an estate, you know. And he reads. So he said that when this came along and everybody wanted to what to do with it, he said, I gave my partner a truck, and I went and I pick up a couple truckloads, and I come and I wash it out, you know. And I left it there to mulch. He says, and come round the next season, he said, put it round the cocoa plants. He says, if you see the size and quality of cocoa that came up that year, you know. And I says, why doesn't anybody sit down and say, that is the way to go? It's like we have we can't think creatively.
Yeah, so what the population was viewing as a nuisance was actually a gift.
Was a boon.
Yeah.
Was a boon, what we should have been doing. And the other thing I always say is that when you plant crops, let's say you're planting tomatoes, and you go to the garden shop, and you get limestone and things like that, and you fix the soil, and you get the soil as close to the pH as you can that grows well. And then you go to the shop and you buy trace minerals, which is volcanic rock, I suppose, with all the mineral content in it, and you sprinkle that in your soil and thing, and you stir it up and thing. And you put mulch and, you know, the right kind of you know, manure. When you plant your tomato plant, the tomato plant comes out humongous, big, profuse flowers. But what is interesting, and I used to stand and watch it, you know, I used to farm once, and you would have your tomatoes growing nice and green, and when it reaches a certain point, that's the time when this bug comes along and sticks inside there and sucks out stuff and creates havoc. Mash it up and things like that. And you'd watch the bug come, and before it alights, it goes, oops, and it will fly away. You didn't have to put any spray on it. And I began to realize that one of the things that you don't see in books is only recently now you begin to see that with people who are talking about how plants communicate with each other, right? They communicate with each other to help each other. And you realize that that plant was giving off some kind of scent or something that put the bug away. However, if you didn't have the proper nutrients in the soil, you get attacked. So I would plant tomatoes over and over, year after year. And I would spray it once, if so much, for the whole season. And that'd be when it just started to come up, you know, and the flowers and things, but a little bit of spray, very weak. And that was it. And so you come now and you're hearing all these things and you realize that you hear farmer telling you, and he said, I wouldn't sell you my lettuce, you know. He said, I spray about 8 different chemicals on it so that it could come to market because it has so much things to eat it. And I wanted to sit down and say to him, well, why you don't look at balancing out the soil? You know, it's because that lettuce has ways of protecting itself. And not only that, ways of communicating. The other thing is that you go along and you want to put down your plant. And what you do is you spray a herbicide. And what this herbicide does is it kills the bacteria in the soil. And that bacteria in the soil is a whole crazy thing that goes on. If you have fungus that is attacked dead things. So if a plant dies and you bury it, it will make manure.
Yes.
How come that same bug that is there to break that thing down into manure doesn't break down in the normal plants?
Because the plants have something in it that defends it.
It gets even more subtle than that. There's a certain fungus that grows in the soil, and the plant puts out nutrients, and the fungus comes around, and that fungus stops the fungus that normally would mash up the plant from touching it at all. So there's a whole symbiotic relationship between the plant, certain types of bacteria, certain types of fungi, interrelating, where they help each other. So the plant is helping to feed the fungus, and at the same time the fungus is saying, hey fellas, don't come here, you know.
Right. And as soon as the plants die,
Yes, the fungus is no longer fed, so it goes its way.
And the other one's coming.
And the other one coming.
Right.
So it's a whole symbiotic relationship. We have the same thing in our gut. So when you have all these set of pesticides and they go into the gut, first thing they do is they start mashing up the probiotic system in your gut.
Right.
And you know, the scientists are now saying that your probiotic in your system represents good probiotic over 80% of your immune system. So it means that all the food that you're eating every day is mashing up your immune system daily.
Yeah.
And you know, we're running along, I go and eat roti, I want a roti. And they don't understand that when you eat that,
Yeah.
it's a GMO product
Yeah.
loaded with chemicals, and that it is going to start mashing up your gut.
Yeah. And
So what we have,
all the injections.
we have more and more problems with sickness. You're a young boy, you know. Me, I'm a little bit older.
Yeah, I dig that.
When I was young, and you have people around, and you listen to them, they'll say, somebody say, well, I had to go to the doctor. Say, where are you going to the doctor for? I never went to the doctor in my life. You have a man 70, 80 years old, has had nothing wrong with him for his whole lifetime. That was a common feature.
Yeah.
Now, when people come by me and say, well, doc, I have a little problem, you know. Let me show you what I take in. And they do so, boom.
And they bring out the Clopas bag.
They bring out a bag. I say, well, the person's name is Jones. I say, that's Jones Pharmacy you bring out there, boy. You know, and so you have drugs that's supposed to help a certain sickness, but that drug has a side effect. So you have a drug to put in the body to help to counteract it. Let me give you an idea. You might have a drug, and the drug upsets your stomach, give you acid reflux.
Yeah.
So now you notice a lot of drugs now that they give you, they give you acid reflux medicine one time. Now the acid reflux medicine will shut down the acid in your stomach. So now you can't absorb your calcium and your magnesium and your potassium and all these things properly. So what does your body do? When it eats and it didn't get no calcium to absorb, because the hydrochloric acid in your stomach is put there for two main reasons. One is to break down all the minerals so that the body could absorb it. And the other one is to kill all the bad bacteria coming in and help to neutralize some of the pesticides and all that. So when you take this thing now that kills the acid, you're giving everybody free sheet to run through.
So your microbiome becomes corrupted.
Not corrupted is a gentle word.
Yeah.
It's much more than that. So we're sitting down in the middle of a chaos forming around us, completely oblivious.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is everybody. That's the sad part about it, is that we have people who are nutritionists, we have people who are doctors, and they'll go down the road and they'll run in the restaurant and they'll sit down and eat all our food, not understanding that they're contributing to their demise.
Right. Yes.
That one amazes me.
Yeah. And the whole level of endurance and physical fitness
Everything.
has deteriorated to the point where somebody could do very little and be considered fit.
Yeah, and you have all kind of Crohn's disease and colitis and all kind of stomach problems coming up that we never heard about before. Right.
New age diseases.
Yes. So here we have because of the rise of illnesses in it. You see, child illness and the rise in the United States is becoming a bigger issue every year. Let me give you a crazy idea. You're using glyphosate and you're using glyphosate to kill the weeds.
Yeah.
After 3 or 4 years, when they spray the glyphosate, the weeds get bigger.
Yeah. They're feeding off it.
So they call them super weeds. So you have to use more glyphosate now to try and kill the weed.
Yeah.
Your wheat comes up and the glyphosate company comes and says to you, well, what you really want is really dry wheat. So what you could do, a few days before you pick your stuff, spray a glyphosate on your crop. It wouldn't kill the wheat, but it will get on the seed and it will pull more water out of the seed, making the seed dry. So you end up with a whole set more glyphosate. So what do? You go to the FDA and you tell them, we want you to raise the limit of the amount of glyphosate. So the amount of glyphosate that you have that is now regarded as safe has not quadrupled, it's gone up like 100 times more than what it was before. Right? And so you're eating food that has degenerated in terms of food value,
So
loaded with all kinds of toxins.
so everything that made with that made from the wheat, any wheat product, would have a lot of glyphosate.
It's poisonous. That's the best way to put it. It's poisonous. Because it will kill bacteria in your gut, which will cause problems. Right? So we have a lot of intestinal problems coming on the rise. And nature takes its own course. But there's another aspect to that. When you use glyphosate over and over on the same piece of land, right, it kills the weeds. But it also kills the bacteria that is in the earth, which keeps the earth friable. You know what I mean by friable?
Yeah.
You could take your hand or you could take a little cutlass and do so and dig it up. In certain places in Argentina, after using that for about 10 years, 15 years, the place don't bear anything. All the bacteria in there is dead and the soil has turned to concrete.
Is that hard?
Yes.
Wow.
Because there's nothing to keep it friable. There's nothing alive in there to put air and aerate it and keep it loose. So it just collapses on itself and it produces nothing. It is said that Mr. Chavez in Venezuela went down to Argentina to see a GMO, and they carried him and they showed him the fields. And he went back to Venezuela and said, "You're not putting any GMO food in here. You're not planting anything
Yeah,
here."
because there's generations that will suffer because of that.
Yes. So you have all these things happening and nobody's saying anything. So the fields that you have that is producing GMO foods, the production is gradually going down. And you counteract that by putting a little more fields
Yes.
to thing it.
And then when it's depleted the land is no longer usable.
Yes. And because you have this thing now where you're knocking out the Shikimate pathway on the bacteria, you're beginning to interfere with the bacteria in the soil. That is a recipe for total disaster.
Yes. So we'll have superbugs.
Right.
Or we have
So-
superbugs already.
Yes. Superbugs, yes, have superbugs in everything.
Right.
You know, it's the same thing that you have. I had an article somewhere here where they said that when you have animals, you take the animals and you feed them antibiotics every day. You put a little bit of antibiotics in the water, supposedly to keep them free from disease.
Yeah.
Right? Mind you, antibiotics don't attack all disease, but you put that in. But what happens is that if he is a chicken, he'll blow up the chicken.
Yeah. More weight.
More wheat. I remember listening to a public radio thing one day in Miami. I'm going up the road. And this guy have a huge cattle ranch in Texas. So he says that a few months before he carries the cattle to market, he goes to the doctor and he buys and supplies, and he buys a little clip-on hormone to put in the air, estrogen hormone.
Yeah.
And they take all the cattle and they pass them, go click, click. Each one costs a little $1.50 or some kind of things like that. So what happens is the cow starts to blow up with that extra estrogen. and it's not long enough to get it to a point where you get heart attack and things like that. So the person who's he asked the question, he says, well, you know, how does that taste? How? And the guy says, I don't eat it. So he says, you don't eat the cows that you grow. He says, well, why are you doing that? I mean, if you think a cow, he said, well, you do a cow that and you get an extra 40 pounds, 50 pounds before you go to market. She said, but 40 or 50 pounds if you get 25 cents a pound for your meat. It's not a lot of money. He says, not a lot of money for one cow. He said, well, when you have 250,000 cows to go to market, add it up. You know, if you make a $10 on a cow, that's a $2.5 million extra, out of which you have laid out $1.50 for the little pill that you put in the air. You understand? So he says, I buy my beef from a little organic farm down the road from me. So it means that in the interest of making more money, we don't care if we poison people in the process of doing it for the sake of profits. When I had my farm and you had chickens, chicken took 10 weeks to come to fruition. And we say about 10 weeks, that's something else. Then it went to 2 months. And I remember having a set of chickens. I wasn't a commercial grower. I had a pen where I put a couple thousand. And when Christmas came in, I'd put that in. And because I was right on the highway, I'd sell it. You know, it's easy. I just put a sign outside, chicken for sale, at a nice price. And people can buy it out before Christmas. But this Christmas, it had a little war. You know, so it was price going down. I tell any fellow who helped me, I say, we ain't selling this, you know. We on the highway, so we could wait. We could wait until after Christmas. So he called me one morning just before Christmas, about 3 or 4 days. He said, we have about 6 chickens dead, you know. He said, but I ain't hearing no cold, you know. You see them, you ain't hearing that or anything. When you look at them, they're looking healthy, you know. I said, watch it now, it might be next morning another 6, 8 dead. Another 5 dead the next morning. So I happened to be consultant engineer to the feed mill down the road. We were making it. And I went down and said to the guy, I said, man, you know, my chicken's dying. You know, he says, how old are they? I said, well, they're coming up to 8 weeks. He said, how are you feeding them? I said, well, the same food that you give me to make them grow. He says, no. He says, when you reach 8 weeks, if you keep on, they will drop dead from heart attack. They have so much fat around their heart. That's it. He said, and in another week or two, he said, you know, 30-40% of your chickens will die. He said, just get them corn. So I went to him and I started giving them corn, and the chickens stopped dying. 2 weeks after, when everybody sell the chicken and the rush finish, I sell my chickens. Right? But I found out how deadly the food was. Now, you bring a chicken to fruition in a month, 5 weeks, with a big barrel of hormones, you know. And when you take the chicken and you kill it, and you raise it, if you take the flesh when it's cooked, and you stick a knife in there and you raise it and you look between the muscles, there's a thick coating of mucus. And I tell my patients, I say, when you get that thick coating of mucus, open it out and stick your nose inside it. And if you could eat that chicken afterwards, you have real belly. Yes. Because it smells horrible. But that's all the toxins and all the things that you're doing, you're forcing the chicken. And the thing about it is, anytime you go anywhere and they cook that in a mass amount, you know, you're going to a buffet or something like that, you could smell it. You could smell that on the smell. Yeah. And I says, how the hell people can eat that?
And then food preparation is not what it used to be either.
If I go anywhere and I have to eat a little bit of food, and they bring the food in front of you, know what's the first thing I do? God has blessed me with a good sense of smell. And I will do so, and I will say, hey,
Thank you very
bring me a cup of tea. You know,
But,
I ain't feel to eat.
yeah.
You know, and so you have that whole thing going on. So it is not surprising that you hear mothers break the silence. This is an organization of mothers who have children with chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
You see, it says here, having a child with chronic illness is no longer a rarity. And if the surge in illness continues, analysts worry it may wreak a havoc to the United States healthcare system in the near future. That is not true. It will not wreck it in the future. It's already wrecking it. Because they're saying about how the healthcare system falling down. You know, United States is first in the world in terms of generational capital. They have this fantastic health system, and they're rating number 26 in the world or something like that. You know, it's wrecking. He says, almost 1 in 2 children today will develop some kind of mental disorder. So he says every 2 children that you have in the States, 1 is going to have something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Okay? And more than 1 in 5 will have a debilitating illness.
Right. That is, it can't function.
Right? So, the most common one being ADHD, attention deficit, you know.
Right. Yes. A big rise.
Illnesses such as asthma, allergies, diabetes, autism, and other chronic conditions are on the rise.
In children.
In children.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
You know. So, whereas before you never hear people getting diabetes until they reach in the 30s and 40s and 50s.
And
And I'm talking about type 2 diabetes.
These are diseases they normally call lifestyle diseases.
Yes. So
Or you could call it lifestyle diseases affecting very young children.
because when you as a parent eat bad and you develop certain diseses, right? It alters the DNA inside you. So your children coming out
Epigenetic.
epigenetic. Oh, good. You're on big one today, boy.
I remember it.
Right? So you have autism and things like that, and other chronic conditions on the rise in children. Okay? The situation is bad for those affected, their families and the country. While modern medicine is good at keeping people alive longer, not necessarily being able to heal. Means more years of taking drugs, more surgeries, and more money spent, money that many people do not have.